Hey everybody, Steve Hupp here, Practice Director for Field Service at Thunder. Coming to you from a different location, actually visiting family for the holidays. And I felt compelled to post another video or to record on a specific question that I went and answered in the community, just because it took me down a path that I had actually never been down in the product. And I'll never be one to say that I know everything about the field service product, but I've definitely been down a few rabbit holes throughout the years, and this one took me down a completely new place, and I was really excited about the results and something that seems so simple, but really was something very interesting and cool, and wanted to share. So the question this time in the community came from somebody who was asking how to dynamically influence the scheduling policy being used when you're using like book appointment, get candidates, as well as from the Gantt. So being able to use specific criteria from the service appointment and using that criteria to influence what scheduling policy is actually being used by default. So, just to be transparent, somebody had already posted and already commented on this post and had pointed the original poster to the auto schedule help article. And within that help article, it talks about a field called the scheduling policy used field on the service appointment. And so that's where I'm going to kind of start, as I get into Salesforce and I show kind of where I went and why I was digging a little bit further. But it all starts with this scheduling policy used field. So I'm going to go ahead and get into Salesforce and just verify that that is coming up. All right, so as I said, it all starts with the scheduling policy used field. So the commenter had put on the post that, the scheduling policy used field, for those who aren't familiar, this is a field on the service appointment, and it's a field that's got value on its own because, when you go to schedule an appointment, and this could be through book appointment, it could be get candidates, or it could even be manually dragging and dropping the appointment on the Gantt, this field is actually populated with the scheduling policy that was used to actually schedule the appointment. So you could go back and reference, which scheduling policy is being used. Maybe you have an unexpected behavior, or unexpected result, and you want to go and see which policy was used. You can go and reference this field. So again, ton of value on its own. However, what a lot of people don't know is that you can actually use this field to influence if you wanted to do, say, auto scheduling, which is where the commenter was posted and actually directed the original poster to go. So for instance, you could use criteria on the service appointment to update this field with a scheduling policy, of your choosing based off that criteria, and then check the auto schedule checkbox. And then the scheduling, when it goes to actually schedule the appointment, it's going to use that policy that you have dictated in this field in order to effectively schedule to the best possible person. So again, a great recommendation, and probably where I would have started my investigation as well, as I've worked with this field in the past. But again, the poster was really asking about being able to do it and get candidates and book appointment and on the Gantt. So that's kind of what drove me to investigate a little bit further. And so again, what's being referred to here is the scheduling policy. So if you were to use get candidates or book appointment from a service appointment or from a work order, this policy here, this customer first, it says default next to it. And that's because within field service settings, you actually have, the policy dictated here, which is the default policy for when you go and use one of these global actions. So the other way that I was familiar with possibly being able to influence, right, which scheduling policy was used or is used in those actions is actually using derivations. So for those of you who aren't familiar, derivations are a great way to map certain fields into a scheduling action. But the big kicker is that it's when the service appointment hasn't been created yet. So for instance, if you have a work order without a service appointment, you can then map fields right directly into the scheduling action and then create the service appointment based off of these values. And one of these fields is actually the scheduling policy. So, my initial gut reaction was to post to the original poster and say, hey, it sounds like you've already created your service appointments because you wanted some criteria off of that to influence the scheduling policy. However, if you could possibly bring that criteria back to the work order, you could use some automation, check the criteria, fill in a custom field on the work order, and then map that value into the scheduling action and create the service appointment and use that particular policy. But then as I was sitting here trying to go through and getting ready to go back and post, my curiosity was piqued, and I said, man, I wonder if you can actually select the service appointment object here. And to my surprise, You can actually add the service appointment, and not unsurprising, because most of these derivations, or all of them, work off of creating the service appointment in the global action. In the service appointment, I found that there's actually a field here called scheduling policy used, and so you can actually, I'm sorry, the scheduling policy, and you can actually map a field into the scheduling policy from the service appointment. And so, not wanting to go and create my own custom field, I actually just selected the one that's already there, which is the policy used field. So once I selected this and I saved my settings, I got a very interesting result. And so I'm going to go through and show that really quickly. So I'm just going to clone one of my work orders here. And actually, before I do that, for those who know me, aren't surprised, I went and built a flow, because I wanted to simulate what the original poster was looking for. And that was based off certain criteria on the service appointment. I want to influence the scheduling policy being used. So I created a flow. I'm very, very simplistic, but in essence, all this is doing is, once the service appointment is created, I'm actually going back to the parent work order. It would be no different if I wanted to validate criteria off of the service appointment. But in this case, I didn't want to go create a bunch of custom fields and things. I just wanted to be able to show that it worked. So when a service appointment is created, I'm referencing the parent work order. I'm checking to see what the priority is, if it's a high priority or a low priority. If it's a high priority job, I'm actually going and querying for the soft boundaries policy based off of the name. And then I'm just setting that value on that field service, or on that scheduling policy used field on the service appointment. Likewise, if it's a low priority job, I'm actually going to set the customer first policy on the service appointment. So again, this is a service appointment that will already be created, right? So I'm not creating it through the derivations, through the book appointment or get candidates action. And so if I go ahead and I'm going to clone this work order here, just because it's one that I was using for my testing. And in this case, I'm actually going to select that this is a high priority job, and just leave everything else, the same for now. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that high priority. I'm going to hit save. And so as the work order gets created, I've got a work type that auto creates the service appointment. So I'm going to open this service appointment up here, and what you'll see is my flow worked, and it basically recognized that the parent work order was a high priority job. And so it's setting the soft boundary scheduling policy in the scheduling policy used field. So this is where it gets very interesting, and this is where I got really excited, because again, I'd never been down this path before. I'd never even thought to search for the service appointment in the derivations. And so now that I've got this set on the work order, I can go ahead and go to get candidates. And what I'm going to see is that the policy that is in that scheduling policy used field is actually set for the get candidates action. So this is fantastic. I've achieved what the poster was looking for, which is how to use different criteria to then influence the scheduling policy that's being used or that comes up based off of some criteria. And again, in my case, I just used criteria from the work order, but I could have used criteria from the service appointment as well. And so, to be frank, my mind was kind of blown here, because, to me, the possibilities are limitless, because, there's a lot of situations that call for multiple policies in an implementation. However, it becomes a user interaction, right? A user intervention to go and switch the policies, which customers are always a little leery of, because you don't want to put that onus on a customer service agent to, in essence, change the policy and know all these different policies that they have to utilize in order to get the expected results. So now what this does is for service appointments that have already been created, you can use logic, from anywhere that you'd like work order, the service appointment, and then literally query for a specific scheduling policy, and then have that scheduling policy be there by default and actually be used in the book appointment or the get candidates actions. So I was super excited. Again, I was very much geeking out about this, because I'd never thought to do it, and it seems like it would solve a bunch of different use cases where you could have multiple policies and be able to automatically influence which one is there, taking all that onus or responsibility off of a customer service agent or someone like that to be able to make that decision. But this was only half of the question, right? The other half was on the Gantt. Now on the Gantt, it becomes a little trickier, because on the Gantt, you've got the policy up here, and this policy kind of is the overarching policy in the whole Gantt, meaning, it's what the rules are checked against. Any one of these service appointments down here that you were, to click candidates on is going to use this policy. And really the only way to influence this particular policy is through the user settings object, which I wouldn't really recommend, because again, if you're wanting to schedule individual appointments using different policies kind of ad hoc, you could get into a situation where, the automation gets tricky, the Gantt is refreshing, you're switching between policies so frequently, violations are coming up and then they're going away. So it seemed like not really a viable path to even go down. But Again, what I did was I actually was able to bring the get candidates action into the Gantt, right? The standard one that we just saw on the service appointment. And the way I was able to do that is, again, through field service settings. I went to the dispatcher console UI, and down here we have the service lightbox visual force pages. So when you open up the service appointment lightbox, which I'll do here in a second, these are the visual force pages that actually show within that lightbox. And you have the ability to configure 2 custom tabs of your own, or even override the ones that are here. So what I did was I just said, okay, so for one of my custom tabs, I'm going to put the get candidates visual force page directly into the lightbox, so I can have the same experience that I got from the service appointment just a few minutes ago, directly in the Gantt without having to leave, achieving the workaround of being able to influence from the Gantt the scheduling policy that's used for an individual appointment. So once I did that and I saved my settings, right, what I got is, so this is my appointment that I was just looking at a few seconds ago. I'm going to open this up and I'm going to hit edit. So this is that light box here. So I've got all the different visual force pages. Here's my custom one. So if I open this up, right, what we'll see is the get candidates action, right, exactly what I saw in the service appointment. And the big thing here is it's adhering to the derivations, right? So because I am mapping that scheduling policy in through the derivation of the service appointment, I'm getting that same experience. So again, I could be going through the Gantt and I could be selecting these individual appointments and having that logic already have been determined when the service appointment was created, mapping in the appropriate scheduling policy and being able to schedule them without ever leaving the Gantt, and having different policies being taken into account as these things get scheduled. Now, keep in mind, right, if you're using a different policy here in the lightbox and then you schedule something and, there's a different scheduling policy in view, you may have that situation where, you'll see different violations and things like that because the policy in the Gantt is the one that's taken into account for all of the rules checking and things like that. But again, the poster was just looking for a way to influence the scheduling policy to be used directly within the Gantt, which, again, through this workaround of adding it to the tab, I was able to accomplish. So, really exciting stuff. Again, I'm very surprised. I've never gone down this path before. I hope this is helpful for folks and being able to see the possibilities of influencing the scheduling policies being used. And I think, more than the Gantt in the book appointment action and the get candidates action, there's a ton of opportunity there to automate that process, have different policies for different things, and have that be influenced by automation and different criteria across the service appointment, the work order. So I really do think the possibilities are endless. So, again, hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Let me know if myself or Thunder can do anything at all to help with your field service implementation, or if you're evaluating field service. And I hope everybody has an amazing holiday. And as always, thanks for watching.